Good afternoon. Welcome to the Consumer Evolution session at the second FII. My name is Lei, and we are going to talk about how we're going to consume in the future, what that means for investment opportunities. So let me introduce my guests. We've got to my right Ms. Haitong Wang, who is the CFO at one of China's leading artificial intelligence and robotics companies, MEGV. We've got Mr. Dmitry Konov, CEO of Super Holding from Russia, and Mr. Faraz Khalid, CEO of Noon from the UAE, Mr. Alain Bejani, CEO of Majid Al Futtaim, also from the United Arab Emirates, and Hazem Bekazem, co-CEO of Investcorp Bahrain. Welcome to you all. So, as a child growing up in China in the 70s, what we had to consume was very limited. There were no restaurants almost. And when you had to buy something, you had to ask the lady at the counter to get it for you, who was often very impatient. And you needed ration coupons to buy cloth, to buy food. 2018, where I live in Beijing, you can get goods and services delivered in a matter of hours. Cash is almost redundant, and there are over 100,000 restaurants in the city. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Wang about the digital infrastructure, about the hardware and the technology that her company is pioneering to make some of that logistics happen.
Great. Thank you very much for the question, Lei. So my company is an artificial intelligence company in China. We're doing computer vision, and we also do robotics control. So today, when we're talking about the stripes of development of e-commerce in China, everyone is so amazed about how efficient it is. We can just click a button on Tmall from Alibaba in the morning and parcel at your door by the evening. But behind that, actually, there are a lot of things, a lot of investment to make that happening. It's investment in the IT structure, it's investment in the logistic infrastructure. Take one example, what our company is doing. We actually helped Alibaba to build its largest automated warehouse in China. It's a 20,000 square meter warehouse. It's for Tmall supermarkets, 40,000 SKU, different items, different goods in that warehouse. We have over 500 robotics working simultaneously. So there's like an AI brain, like controlling the troops of the robotics based on all the order coming every day, every minute actually. So they dispatch the task to every individual robotics so they can move to wherever it wants to be going and to pick up the goods and deliver the parcel to the conventions. So that's how the e-commerce can be so efficient in China.
Great. So Farhad, Noon has been going for 11 months and things are traveling well. Tell us about some of the future strategies.
Yeah, so we live in a very exciting time. There are more than 400 million people in our region, right? It's mostly young, very connected. They're consuming sort of all kinds of media online. So when you look at the region as a whole, you'd think that, if there was one part of the world that was primed for digital disruption, this was it. And I think that's what inspires us. We are broadly underserved. Still the e-commerce penetration in the region is, depending on how you ask, it's between 1.5 and 3%, which is still very low. If you look at the median in emerging markets, it's much higher. We believe the world is changing. We believe people will buy things online, and I think Noon has a role to play in that. I think as a homegrown internet company, we see ourselves as the operating system for retailers in the region. We don't think of ourselves as an e-commerce company. We think of ourselves as a logistics company. We are a technology platform that allows people to sell and shoppers to buy. We think of ourselves as an engineering company that's building all of these things, but more than that, we see our role as that of an enabler. The world is getting disrupted. Not all retailers have the power to invest billions of dollars in R&D. Someone has to do it, and I think Noon has that very unique role. We understand the culture. We are from here. What inspires me is that in the last 11 months, we've obviously sort of grown a lot, done well. Our vans are in all parts of the kingdom. But just the fact that a kid in Riyadh can look at the Apple App Store and see that a company who's headquartered in Malga in Riyadh is sort of the #1 app. And that's powerful, you know, that's very, very strong, and that's what drives us. We're very proud of what the team has built. We're very excited about what's coming. But I think the very sort of mission and the vision of the company is there to sort of make sure that the retailers, the small businessmen, the large conglomerates selling physically right now have the necessary infrastructure to compete in a disrupting sort of world. And I think that's what Noon is, and we see ourselves sort of playing that space over the next few years.
Wonderful. Hassan, do you want to share with us some of the insights on luxury retail, which is Investcorp's one of Investcorp's niches?
Well, as an investor in the luxury retail now for the last 35 years, it's really quite interesting to see how that customer journey has evolved over the last 35 years. When we used to own Gucci in 1989, it was all around the retail experience, sales per square foot, number of new store openings, and what have you. Today, that has changed. There is a young blogger here in Saudi called Noha Nabil. Noha has 4.6 million followers. I bet she has more impact on consumer retail sales in Saudi than the largest budget any of the large majors can have. So that as a consumer, as a product maker, you need to adjust to that. But then you take it to one next level. Who is behind Noha Nabil? It's Instagram. Is there a Mr. Instagram who Noha goes and says, please, can you give my Instagram site to the young Saudi retailers? No, there isn't. There's a computer system. There's an artificial intelligence unit, which then will factor in you as the user, what should they push? So does that mean that for the retailers, the first and foremost gateway is artificial intelligence? Is that the first gateway toward reaching to your customer? Before Instagram or before the bloggers or before the end users. So all these dynamics has to evolve into the thinking of all consumer retailers, luxury or not, because the experience is no longer about having the fanciest store on the best location or the best mall and location. It's about engaging with the products, the AI unit behind it, and how to make it your best friend, to the ultimate social bloggers, and ultimately to the end customer.
Elaine, would you agree that that's how retail is changing in the era of e-commerce?
Well, look, I think that it's very difficult to agree. It's very also difficult to disagree. The reality is that no one has the magic recipe and no one understands what's happening, because what's happening is actually shifting. We are a generation that's living between two worlds. The physical world that we mastered in the past and the digital world that we are all exploring. And whomever is going to talk to you with a lot of certitude about what's happening doesn't know what he or she are talking about. Okay, so the only thing that we can actually do is to ready ourselves. The future may be totally brick and mortar, or maybe totally digital, or maybe in between. The one thing is sure is that whatever the future is going to look like is going to be fueled and powered by technology. Technology has been seen so far as, I would say, a competitor to the human element. I personally disagree. I think that the human element has never been as important as it is today. And our biggest role today as leaders is actually to work on people mindset, to support people leadership development, so they can understand the future. And that they can actually be open and, I would say, have an inquisitive mindset or a learning mindset, whereby they understand that the future for them is not anymore to have a job, but actually to play a role. Technology will do the job, but we will have to play a role. We have been trained to do a job more than to actually play a role. And we see that sometimes, or most of the time, people see that as a threat. We need to work on our people for them to actually embrace technology. To do that, we need to raise the level of awareness. We need to support them in their leadership development, as well as their knowledge, the understanding of what technology really brings to them, and how can they leverage technology to do better.
But isn't that more suited to a broad discussion on artificial intelligence and job replacement? rather than...
It has an impact on that, of course, but the reality is whatever the future is going to look like is going to be shaped by us. Humans develop technology, and I don't think we are anywhere near artificial intelligence. You know, artificial intelligence is a ubiquitous name that we use, all of us. We're far from artificial intelligence. It's still fueled by humans. We still have the power to shape it in the right way in order for us to be able to actually leverage it. And I want to say just one thing, just because I think Feroz talked about the future, how it is. I want to say that there is a distinction that's now being created, which is the difference between shopping and buying. In the past, shopping and buying were one thing. Today and in the future, the act of buying is ubiquitous and is irrelevant. You can buy the way you want.
It can be automated.
Exactly. The experience is in the shopping. And the future is about experience and it's about having the buying act of it totally seamless and effortless. That's how I see the future.
Right. Dimitri, we talk a lot about online, offline integration in consumption in retail. Is that happening in Russia?
Absolutely. It's very similar. We are 140 million market, and we have our online retail growing times faster than traditional retail, and there's been a lot of cannibalization of traditional retail. And there are probably two things I would like to mention. I would not be original saying anything about online retailing. As I said, it's very similar in Russia than in other parts of the world. The two things which is of significant discussion in Russia at the moment is first what to do with the physical infrastructure of traditional retail, and you have a completely different platform. You have your mobile phone, you have delivery centers, small delivery centers sometimes, you have distribution centers, and it's very much different from the mega malls, which has been the major investment in the last decade. And it's in the business of the real estate, it's a completely different dynamics. There has been a wave of investment, and it's becoming abundant. So that's one part. Another part, we've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and any type of analytics. It's all about data. And at the moment, you have someone who aggregates data and monetizes it, makes monetization of this data. And you have a lot of consumers who is actually giving out the data for free, and that's their personal data. And at one moment there should be a regulation which actually takes part of the monetization, which is now done by aggregators, and every consumer should actually benefit from that, from giving his own data into this into this lake of data.
Right. Hi, Tom. Just on the subject of the shopping experience, I know that you're working on technologies, for example, where because you are able to use facial data of consumers, what they're looking at, what they're picking up, how many seconds are they holding the item, and that allows the retailer to optimize how they set up merchandise. Tell us about that.
Great. So when we are thinking about the retail, it's always about how to create the best consumer experience. So I think technology for us is trying to make that impossible possible. We're trying to merge the online with offline. For example, on online parts, I'm not sure whether Lei has ever bought makeups online. For ladies, we always wonder.
We want to try
what one particular color looks on our face. So with our face recognition technology and landmarking technology, we create some virtual try-on applications for all the online makeup brands. And by statistics, that really bump up the sales. And on offline parts, for example, for convenience stores, it's always about how to better understand consumers' demands. Because for a typical convenience store, it's always about 100 square meters, and they only have the capacity to accommodate the 200 SKU in that particular store. So with our technology, it's trying to analyze the hot spot in the store. and how consumers behave in this store. So that collecting this information, combining that information with online information, trying to better understand the consumer's needs. It's a one way to help them to better merchandise, better optimize the so-called look of this store so that it can bump up the sales. Because for the offline stores, it's always the highest cost is about the rental and about the labor. So anything above that break-even line is revenue to them. It's profit to them. So that is one thing we are trying to help the offline brands to do.
Farad, a few years back, when Alibaba was going from big to mega, there was a backlash in the Chinese media that they were eating the traditional retailers' lunch, and therefore we had the whole, online, offline integration. They bought into traditional retailers and all that. How do you see, for example, Noon, as it grows, how it intersects with traditional retailers?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Noon's mission is to sort of find a space where we enable the retailers. We become the platform where we provide the infrastructure, the technology, the logistics, and the plumbing, frankly, that they need to compete in this changing world, right? There are people contest that e-commerce might be 20% of retail soon, all of that stuff. One thing that's not sort of in any doubt is that the share of direct sales through online channels will grow. Now, our role in that is sort of clear that we will, yes, be a channel for people to sell through Noon and our apps and our websites, but we also want to build a platform where people can use our warehouses, our last mile delivery infrastructure, our payments technology, our wallet, and all of those things that are right now bringing friction between them and their customer. I think that's the approach we've taken. And if you look at some of the steps that Noon has made, we've tied up with 2 large retail chains. So Al-Shaya & Company, which is the region's sort of very large brand distributor, is a partner with us. Same as electronics chain in the kingdom called Extra. Very close partnership with us where we're sort of working with them to become an incremental channel for them. There is a very large number of people coming online in our region. They're spending, by all estimates, sort of 3 to 5 hours a day online on their phones. That's sort of a portal for us to reach them. And then our view is that if Noon can become a channel to traditional retailers to leverage, but also to small businesses who cannot afford those storefronts that you talked about, or the warehousing that you need, or the complex supply chain that you need, Noon can provide some of that plumbing and become an easy, cost-efficient, growing channel for retail. So yes, we see that as a deep partnership. It's in our DNA. We really see ourselves only as a platform, and we don't see ourselves as a retailer.
Now, Hazem, as the concept of luxury evolves in the future for the consumer, what investment opportunities do you see? Is it in technology? Is it in platforms? Is it in lifestyle experiences?
So, 34,000 years ago, the concept of luxury was a very simple piece of stone which someone dug from the ground and they stuck on someone's ears, and that's luxury. Fast forward 4,000 years on, things have evolved a bit. Today, for my children, luxury is how many likes they get on their Facebook post. It's how many Instagram followers. And that is more important for them than a luxury item. So trying to understand the modern consumer purchase behavior, why and how to monetize it, is very key. When I say luxury, probably the first thing to many sticks to their mind is a Louis Vuitton handbag or a Rolex watch. However, for the new generation, which is the only generation that counts, for a simple reason, in 10, 15 years' time, they will be the vast majority of the buying power in this economy. Okay? That's what matters. Every single one of that generation, including us, has an avatar. We all have whether it's a Facebook profile, even an email address. That's your online avatar, your digital avatar. For that generation, your avatar, your digital avatar, is as important as yourself. And I reference my teenage children. They do spend more on online items, which I would never spend anything on, than anything else. However, that is the reality which we are living in. And if we are, as businesses, as investors, are to evolve and be an active participant, a successful participant in the future, We have to take into account those trends which are inevitable and those trends which are very much taken on this new digital world. Now, one thing I want to comment is we do not necessarily see the digital world as separate from this world. It is, in a way, it is one. It's interconnected. Many businesses on the retail front, when we talk to their chief executives, they either say, oh, well, e-commerce, of course we have e-commerce. It's in our marketing department. Okay. So it's still perceived as a marketing tool. And others actually even go and say, no, actually, it is one of our channels. Now, is e-commerce a channel, or it is fundamentally where your business and where your core business is digital, and your retail environment does nothing more than support your brand the same way that social bloggers support your brand and any other initiative supports your brand. So what does this mean for us as investors? It's very exciting times. Hopefully, if we do our job right, we should be able to make money in periods of transformation and change. Every change have its own set of winners and losers. Having said that, will there be a market for Rolex watches in 20 years' time? I don't know. However, we should be prepared.
How many people here are wearing watches? I'm not.
The point is, we need to be able to understand the current purchase power behavior of the buying generation, and then how to interpret that into a buying behavior. So to answer your question, most likely our investments will be in a hybrid of a consumer brand that acts more in their DNA and their senior leadership as a technology company, as opposed to retailers. And in our view, that is a big part of the success of any consumer brand going forward.
Okay, a consumer tech company. You look like you want to come in on this.
Me?
Yeah?
Anytime.
Well, Majid Al Futtaim is a lifestyle conglomerate.
Yes.
How is that changing, the whole concept of lifestyle in the future?
Well, look, I would say, I think we have a very nice different angles to what's happening today. And my personal opinion is that technology is really what's going to power the new world. I think millennials and Generation Z are also going to become, baby boomers of today are not what they were 30 years ago. So, I see, how people are evolving. The millennials of today are not the millennials of 5 years ago. So there is an evolution. Now, the big question is there opportunities? Yes. In my personal opinion, as Majid Al Futtaim, what is actually driving us going forward is to have a digital presence that's as important as our physical presence. This prominence, that physical prominence that we have, has to be matched by a digital presence. And I think a lot of people today focus on digital, on selling online. I say selling online, fine. It's actually your digital presence. I think Feroz mentioned that one to whatever, depending who you ask, 1 to 3% is the size of the market today. So you would say negligible today, yes, maybe. But in reality, 2/3 of the customers that walk into our malls or walk into any brands are check online what they are going to buy offline. So the act of buying is not important. What's determining the decision of buying is the digital presence. And that is not only buying online. So people check online, compare, look at things, etc., and then they might go and buy offline. So what is powering the offline is actually the digital presence online. And you see a lot of the brands, a lot of the product do not have enough, I would say, digital presence. And this is why Amazon today competes on search with Google. Google has always been the search company, and now Amazon is becoming a search company. A lot of people go to Amazon to search for a product, not to buy it. And these trends are emerging. They're going to change as well. So you don't know what the future is going to be like, but you just have to be prepared.
Okay. Now, back to the China perspective. I know that MEGV probably has globalization plans, and when we talk about the Chinese mobile internet successes, often it's because they operate within a very Chinese ecosystem. And then once they go abroad, they have to factor in, a totally different ecosystem. So how are you handling that?
Yeah, I think one thing fundamental is that this this type of development of technology is global. It's just not within US or within China or within Europe. So technology itself is universal. So take one product, for example. In China, we built the largest third-party authentication platform so that we can authenticate users' identity online. That is very helpful to fintech companies when you want to do bank transactions online. And that is also very helpful to Didi, Uber, this type of car-hailing companies, because you need to verify the driver's identity in order to be safe. So we serve 100% of the car-hailing companies in China, including China's Uber, Didi, and others. And today, we're also in Southeast Asia. We are serving Grab, the largest car-hailing brands in the Southeast Asia. So I think universally, this is a global business because technology itself is like water. It's like air. It's universal. Yeah.
Do you think that's going to happen in the future, that technology companies will eventually become border neutral, nationality neutral?
Absolutely. So I think we have technology which is helping companies to cross borders. And you have technology simultaneously being developed in different parts of the world, and it's the easy access to any market. There is, of course, some regulation aspects. There are some regulation aspects in any particular country, but generally speaking, its technology is borderless.
And Farad, I know that this region actually has a very strong advantage compared to, say, China or Japan, which is a very young demographic. How do you work that to your advantage?
Yeah, I mean, we look at the region and we see that there are two sort of unifying sort of aspects. Culturally, Mina is very similar in the belt, and there's language. I think these things make it both unique and interesting for a local champion to emerge. And we see ourselves as the internet company for the Arab world. That's kind of the mission, right? And the challenges of emerging market consumer internet remain. So you've got very weak logistics, you've got weak payment systems, and all of those things. And we believe that to fully address the opportunity in Mina, which is, we believe, our market, we need to really focus and roll out our infrastructure and then but fundamentally solving the same problem. There is secular sort of shift to digital discovery and consumption, and we have a role to play in that. And if it works in one of these markets, it should work across the region, and that's really our bet. Just to give you a perspective, more than 90% of the traffic we see on the platform is in Arabic, right? So it's a very local, very sort of specific customer, and I think.
Do you think that will change in the future?
I mean, it's consistent with the sort of demographic mix in most of these markets, and I think the young consumer is still sort of coming online, beginning to shop online. And I think I'm actually sort of fascinated by just the levels of engagement. If you see the kind of devices that are coming on our platform, I mean, most of the phones that we see are less than 3 years old, which is very unique in emerging markets. People have much older devices. The penetration of apps versus web in this region is very unique. Like apps actually are what wins. So I think there are some peculiarities of this market which have helped sort of the companies leapfrog some of the other developing markets. So look, we're very fascinated by the region we're in. We feel that to address it fully, we need to focus, and that's really where we are. And like I said, very excited to be living in sort of these super
young and
times, yeah.
energetic region. Right. Hazem, I want to talk about consumer behaviors because while the underlying technology might have similarities, consumer behaviors can vary greatly between regions. Share with us some of those insights.
So I'm going to give you one example, which I love to use. So there is we looked at buying a suitcase luggage maker some time ago.
Which
part of it doesn't matter. But as part of the due diligence, they had this massive spike in sales in 1 month in China. We're like, oh, what happened? So they sold 45,000 suitcases within a span of 48 hours, which is unheard of. How do they do it? It was a promotion which one bank did, Basically, these suitcases had, do you know the Minions, the cartoon? The
Yes.
Minions? So these are these customized suitcases with a Minion cover, laminate cover. And any person who would open an account would get a Minion suitcase. So why do I say that? When I opened my first bank account about 30 years ago, it was about which bank, which has a big base and had like credit cards and, a checkbook and what have you. But the buying decision today is based, I want to have a suitcase with the Minions on it. So that is a reality. And as we all know, once you open your bank account, the changing cost is relatively usually low. The same thing with your email. It's highly unlikely you're going to close your first bank account or your first email address. So why do I say this? In our generation, I doubt any of us would have opened a bank account because someone's going to offer us a suitcase, okay? Let alone a suitcase with some cartoon characters on it. However, it is the reality.
It's very Chinese.
It's 45,000 new accounts. This is not a couple of hundreds. So how for that particular institution to think of this particular road to market, this particular access to that particular generation and that particular population is quite unique. Is that different across other parts of the world? There are definitely some cultural differences. And you see it, I'm sure, at noon you can see it quite clearly in terms of shopping habits, average basket size, when to log in and what have you. But I just want to focus quickly on the Middle East. The Middle East, we have invested about $1.5 billion over the last 10 years on private equity Middle East. I wish we did more, and I'm sure we'll do much more. Why? If I look at it is a young population. It is actually a very witty and funny population, particularly if you look at with the online activities. But also it's a very entrepreneurial. Middle Easterns in general tend to be quite entrepreneurial, and it's not about, oh, I want to get a job in a company and then stay there for the next 30 years. It's what can I do something, and how can I be creative? How can I be unique and differentiated? And these are all the ingredients of a very successful entrepreneur. Hopefully that, coupled with capital and the right regulatory framework, I have no doubt that this region could be one of the more exciting regions throughout the world for investing, and particularly tech investing. As you rightly pointed, it is a very small world today, whether the tech platform powering whatever we do, whether it's out of Taiwan, Beijing, Bay Area, or Riyadh, it doesn't matter. As long as it works, it achieves its purpose, that's good enough.
Elaine, do you see different consumer behaviors for lifestyles across regions?
Yes, absolutely. I think in the past 3-4 years, we have started to see emerging and crystallizing much more than before. We've been living in what I call tectonic shifts, which is a number of shifts that's happening, unfortunately, at the same time. So you have a global trend in people moving from product and services to experience. People are spending more on experience and much less on product and services. People want to travel more, people want to experience things much more than before, and they're less interested, as Hassan said, in product. Even
want things to be Instagram worthy.
Yeah, so that's one. Number two, and that's a big challenge because all of the business world, most of it is not experience heavy and is becoming experience heavy, and there is so much that needs to be done there, and that's very important for us. Number two, there is the digital and the technology impact. People are moving more into wanting to have a digital dimension in every basically interaction. And this is the issue for me, again, is not about online shopping, it's about the importance and the impact of digital in decision making. And this is something that gives you actually, you have to spend much more and you might get much less than you would thought before. This is increasing your cost. You have to be able to actually turn that around and make money out of it.
Wonderful conversation.
But this is very important as well.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for, as I'm being told we need to wrap things up. So thank you so much to our guests, Hassan, Elaine, Haitong, Dimitri, and Farad. Thank you so much for your insights.